Good morning. Today we continue with Genesis chapter 21, verses 8 through 21. I want to still encourage you to read this passage personally because it teaches us about separation, God's provision, and his care for the overlooked. In verse 8, Isaac is weaned and Abraham makes a great feast. This moment marks growth and a visible continuation of God's promise. Joy surrounds fulfillment of God's word, but tension will soon follow. In verses 9 and 10, Sarah sees Ishmael mocking Isaac, and she asks Abraham to send Hagar and Ishmael away. This is a difficult and emotional moment. Ishmael represents what was produced through a human effort, while Isaac represents God's promise. The separation is not about personal rejection, but about God's covenant line being preserved through Isaac. Sometimes God requires separation between what is born of human striving and what is born of his promise. In verses 11 through 13, Abraham is grieved, but God speaks to him, telling him to listen to Sarah because the covenant will be established through Isaac. Yet God also shows compassion. He promises to make a nation of Ishmael as well. This shows us that while God's covenant purposes are specific, his mercy extends beyond them. God does not abandon Ishmael. In verses 14 through 16, Hagar and Ishmael wander in the wilderness, and their water runs out. In desperation, Hagar places Ishmael under a shrub and weeps, unable to watch him suffer. This is a scene of helplessness and human limitation. But what appears hopeless is not unseen by God. In verses 17 through 19, God hears the voice of the boy and calls to Hagar from heaven. God reassures her, renews his promise concerning Ishmael, and opens her eyes to see a well of water. Provision was already there. God simply enabled her to see it. This really teaches us that God often provides before we even recognize it. And in the moment of despair, he reveals his sustaining grace. In verses 20 and 21, God is with Ishmael as he grows in the wilderness, becomes an archer, and begins his life path. Even outside the covenant line, God's presence and care are evident. God sees, hears, and sustains according to his sovereign purpose. We can also see how this passage points us to Christ. Just as God heard the cry of Ishmael in the wilderness, Jesus hears the cries of helplessness and provides living waters to those who trust him. God's provision is not only physical, but ultimately spiritual through Christ, who meets us in our need and gives life. Today, when you face uncertainty or feel overwhelmed, remember that God sees and hears you. Ask him to open your eyes to the provision he has already placed before you. Walk forward in trust, knowing that even in the wilderness seasons, God is present, sustaining and guiding your path. God bless.